Want my latest market insights? My latest report, We Are There, is now available. Scan this QR code or click on the link in the description. I'm still very much on the short oil front. Okay, now I know there's geopolitical flare-ups. They can create a short the rip opportunity, but for right now, big picture, as a space, I have been on this since April of last year, and I still see that coming on down. In fact, there was a Bloomberg piece out this morning that China is pushing to become custodian of foreign sovereign gold reserves. The PBOC is issuing the Shanghai Gold Exchange to court central banks in friendly countries to basically let them house it. Switzerland does a lot of refining and storage, but they're looking to become the custodian for central banks around the world, which is kind of big step. Now, I asked Jeffrey about this, saying China is not only now the collar trade on oil, largest marginal buyer, but also largest refined reserves, but also soon the custodian for gold. He is referring to this move. The intent of China is to basically end this energy or petrodollar. The US has been doing this rationing for many, many years because oil globally has been priced in dollars. China has already, as you know, been going through a decoupling. We've talked about this of China now really has much, much less reliance on oil, number one, because they forced a mandate to transition to electric vehicles, and 50% of ground transportation in the world is likely, Jeffrey's estimate, to transition from ICE, internal combustion engines, to EV. They basically saw that coming and wanted to get way ahead of it. They also wanted to have less dollars, less treasury, US treasuries, and less US oil. So it's a rationing type of effect. Anyway, this is the US that has been for years forcing the world to pay a higher price for energy. Now, China's going direct to Iran, Venezuela. They're drilling outside of the borders in Venezuela. They're buying from Russia, of course, and they're settling trade in gold. So they don't want to rely on the US dollar, US treasuries, or the US petrodollar. This is a big deal. This is one of the main reasons why gold has been moving strongly higher. And I know folks will go back to confiscation of Russian assets back in 2022. That's absolutely true, but it really, really started picking up with this incoming regime here of higher fiscal and China decoupling post-COVID and this energy rationing that Jeffrey's expression is basically going away. And China is moving away from it by settling trade. It's also a big deal because not only will this help China become a GDP expander, but the rest of the world will also enjoy lower relative energy prices since oil has been linked to the US dollar. It's a big deal. So we already know Venezuela has the largest reserves in the world by a nautical mile. It is, however, all about getting it out and refining it, etc. But the point is, it's much cheaper to extract oil in Venezuela than the US, but that's obviously unfriendly for the US, but not to China. So anyway, they have the advantage of just going direct and or transitioning to EV. The cost is much, much, much cheaper per mile than using gasoline. Jeffrey has written about this for a few years now. So it's going to be very helpful for countries that are not exporting oil, and that's going to be a huge GDP growth expander, and it could help globally increase GDP worldwide. That's actually not talked about, obviously, in this headline. This is talked about by Jeffrey in discussions about why this matters. So we also have the grid having issues in the US, but alternative energy is the way over in China. And we also have their advances in science and energy as it relates to all kinds of new technology that we don't have here. So they're far, far, far ahead in expanding their grid capacities, while here it's all talk about CapEx, CapEx, CapEx spending to make the grid robust. We're way behind solar, we're way behind wind, etc. Anyway, it's going to make solar total cost, even with storage, much, much cheaper than gas in China. So again, they're going to have the advantage. We're going to have these kind of like regional spaces where US is isolated in its own ecosystem ecosystem of resisting the EV transition, resisting alt energy transition under Trump and maybe the next guy or gal. But the point is, it's very, very GDP positive for rest of world. It's some kind of important to distinction. Now, this is not going to happen overnight, but this is one of the reasons, and I didn't see this. We didn't even talk about this yesterday when I was on my pre-market rant about it's going to hit the oil industry here, both oil and nat gas. So all that discussion of energy shortage is not going to be as important if the rest of the world is less energy dependent, especially on the US petrodollar. So it is very bullish rest of world, not necessarily US. The second part of this impact, which is of course not really understood, is that gold can be used as electronic warrants as collateral for global trade instead of the US dollar. It's a big, important headline that many people will gloss over or not understand.
Join Club today to engage with Samantha and her team of 10 experts. Scan this QR code or click the link in the description. Subscribe to LaDuc Trading YouTube channel for more live trading room recap videos and other content.